In a world drowning in notifications, opinions, and endless noise, the ability to think clearly has become as rare as it is precious. We live surrounded by distractions that fragment our attention, emotions that cloud our judgment, and voices that tell us what to think before we've had the chance to think for ourselves. Yet nearly 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor sitting in his tent on the Germanic frontier discovered something profound: that the quality of our thoughts determines the quality of our lives. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the most powerful empire in human history, understood that true strength comes not from controlling others, but from mastering the chaos within our own minds. His private journal, never intended for publication, reveals the inner workings of a man who learned to think with crystalline clarity amid the storms of leadership, war, and human suffering. What he discovered can transform how we navigate our own turbulent age. The first principle Marcus Aurelius mastered was the art of observing his thoughts without becoming enslaved by them. Most of us live as prisoners of our own mental chatter, reacting to every fear, every anger, every fleeting impression as if it were absolute truth. But the emperor learned to step back and watch his mind work, like a scientist studying a specimen under glass. He would notice when his thoughts turned toward resentment, when they spiraled into worry, when they grasped after things beyond his reach. This wasn't suppression or denial, but something far more powerful: conscious awareness. When we observe our thoughts rather than drowning in them, we create space between stimulus and response. In that space lies our freedom to choose how we think, how we feel, and how we act. Emotional discipline forms the cornerstone of clear thinking, and Marcus Aurelius knew that our feelings, however intense, are not facts. They are temporary visitors in the mind, arising and passing away like clouds across the sky. The Stoic emperor trained himself to experience emotions fully while refusing to let them dictate his decisions. When anger arose, he felt it completely but did not let it poison his judgment. When fear crept in, he acknowledged its presence without allowing it to paralyze his will. This is not emotional numbness, but emotional mastery, the difference between being tossed by every wave and learning to navigate by the stars. Clear thinking requires us to honor our feelings while maintaining the discipline to think beyond them. Every evening, Marcus Aurelius would take up his pen and pour his thoughts onto papyrus, not for posterity, but for clarity. His meditations reveal a mind engaged in constant dialogue with itself, questioning assumptions, examining beliefs, and wrestling with the complexities of existence. This practice of reflective writing became his tool for untangling the knots of confusion that daily life creates in our minds. When we write our thoughts, we externalize the internal chaos and give it form. We can see patterns we missed, contradictions we overlooked, and truths we had buried beneath layers of mental noise. The act of writing forces us to slow down, to choose our words carefully, and to confront the reality of what we actually think, rather than what we imagine we think. In our hyper-connected age, we have forgotten the transformative power of silence and solitude. Marcus Aurelius would retreat into himself, finding in quietude the space necessary for genuine reflection. He understood that clarity cannot emerge from a mind that never stops consuming external stimuli. Like a muddy pond that becomes clear only when the water stops moving, our thoughts settle into transparency when we give them the gift of stillness. Regular periods of silence allow us to hear the voice of our own wisdom beneath the clamor of outside influences. In solitude, we remember who we are when we're not trying to be anyone for anyone else. The emperor also mastered the crucial skill of separating truth from opinion, reality from interpretation. He constantly reminded himself to see things as they actually are, stripped of the stories we tell ourselves about them. An insult is just words spoken by another person, not a fundamental assault on our worth. A setback is merely a change in circumstances, not a cosmic judgment on our character. A loss is simply the natural flow of life, not evidence that the universe is against us. This practice of seeing clearly requires us to question our immediate interpretations and ask, what actually happened here? What am I adding to this reality that isn't really there? When we learn to perceive events without the distorting lens of our assumptions, we can respond with wisdom rather than react from confusion. Central to Marcus Aurelius's philosophy was the recognition that peace comes from focusing only on what lies within our control. He wrote extensively about the futility of wasting mental energy on circumstances, people, and outcomes beyond our influence. This is not passive resignation, but strategic wisdom. When we pour our thoughts into things we cannot change, we drain the mental resources needed for things we can influence. Clear thinking requires us to constantly sort our concerns into two categories: what I can control and what I cannot. Our thoughts, our responses, our efforts, our character, these remain forever within our domain. Everything else, no matter how important it seems, lies beyond the reach of our will. This simple distinction, practiced consistently, eliminates vast amounts of mental clutter and anxiety. The practice of presence, of anchoring our attention in the current moment, was fundamental to the emperor's approach to clear thinking. He understood that the mind naturally wanders into regrets about the past and anxieties about the future, but that real life happens only in the present moment. When we allow our thoughts to scatter across time, we lose the ability to engage fully with the reality in front of us. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to return again and again to the here and now, to the breath in his lungs, the ground beneath his feet, the task at hand. This wasn't mystical practice, but practical wisdom. The present moment is the only place where we can actually think, choose, and act with clarity. Perhaps most importantly, Marcus Aurelius learned to constantly ask himself a simple but revolutionary question: is this essential? In a life filled with infinite demands on our attention, the ability to distinguish between what matters and what merely seems urgent becomes the key to mental clarity. The emperor had to make decisions that affected millions of lives, yet he knew that not every problem required his personal attention. Not every crisis demanded his immediate response. He learned to identify the essential few among the trivial many. This practice of ruthless prioritization applies not just to our external commitments, but to our internal focus. Is this worry essential? Is this anger serving any useful purpose? Is this train of thought taking me toward wisdom or away from it? When we become guardians of our own mental energy, we can invest it where it will yield the greatest returns. The path to clear thinking is not about becoming perfect or achieving some impossible state of perpetual calm. It is about developing the skills to navigate the inevitable storms of life with greater wisdom and less suffering. Marcus Aurelius faced plague, war, political intrigue, and personal loss, yet he maintained his clarity by returning again and again to these fundamental practices. In our own age of information overload and artificial urgency, his ancient wisdom offers a different way forward. Clarity is not about knowing everything, but about seeing reality as it is, free from the distortions of fear, desire, and ego. It is about learning to think rather than simply react, to choose rather than be chosen for. As the philosopher emperor wrote in his private moments, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In a world that profits from our confusion, clear thinking becomes our most radical act of rebellion and our deepest source of peace.